Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche Podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Use code DNVR when you sign up for a new account to get amazing odds boosts every single day. AJ, Rudo, Meghan coming to you live on an Avalanche off day. I guess technically the last off day of the regular season.
That's depressing.
There'll be some off days before the playoffs too, though. So there's a little bit of here, a little bit of there with that. We figured it was a good day to talk about some of the X-Factors, not just for the Avs, but around the Western Conference coming into the playoffs here. The matchups aren't set, but all of the teams in the playoffs are set. So
none of our X-Factors were Preds or Flames players. We're good?
No, was not.
Good.
Because we did this before.
Yeah, before last night's games, we
settled,
sent our
so.
X-Factors in, so it could have been a little dicey there.
That would have been pretty funny to have a Nazem Kadri answer. Oh, whoops.
Going to be an X-Factor on the golf course, baby.
Did you see,
Brought to you by Pins and Aces.
Ah, nice.
Did you see Brad Treliving today?
No.
Spent their morning at practice, he was on the bench having long conversations with players. And Flames media was like, he has never done this before. And it was like, uh-oh.
Saying goodbyes, maybe.
What is happening? Are you getting a start on exit interviews or it's such a strange thing for a GM to do immediately after a team gets eliminated. Especially a team with such high expectations coming into the year.
Maybe a topic for a different show that we may or may not be working on, but Sutter's got to be gone, right?
That's the impression I have, not just because of the lack of success within the team, but the lack of cohesion, too. I don't think he effectively got through to some of the players he needed to the most.
It can't be an open secret that half of your locker room is in revolt of your head coach.
Yeah.
And keep that guy.
It's a tough look. It's a tough look for sure. So lots of stuff to get into on that front, but not today. Today we're talking about the playoff teams.
The teams that did get it done.
The teams that didn't throw. That includes, if you did not check in on last night, Winnipeg did clinch their spot. So that's all 8. You have Winnipeg, Seattle, and then in the Pacific, it's Vegas, Edmonton, LA, in some order. Order's not decided yet. And then the Central is Colorado, Dallas, Minnesota. So
I think Minnesota is set.
Yeah, they're stuck in the third
As
spot
the
for
third
sure.
seed.
Yeah.
Winnipeg is set as wild card 2. And then everything else is still
Up for grabs. Yep.
I think LA. Well, I guess Seattle can still technically catch LA.
Technically,
I actually don't know after last night.
I think they can, but I'm not sure. Maybe I'm wrong. Either way, Vegas and Edmonton playing for the top of the Pacific, and the Avs. And
I don't know what the
Dallas playing for
tiebreaker is. So
top. Okay, so yeah.
But yeah, they are 2 points back.
So maybe theoretically, who knows? Anyway, are we ready? Do we want to get into some of these X factors that we've all selected?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right.
So we didn't know who the X factors were.
Yeah.
Until just minutes ago. So we're going to have to, the idea is that Alyssa gives us an X factor and we have to defend them.
And there's an ejector under each of our seats. And
If you
whoever
fail,
has the
that's
worst
right.
pick is going to get launched off
You
set.
failed to convince us out that broken window right there and onto Cole. And I guess it's onto York.
A little marginally safer.
Yeah.
Marginally safer.
All right, Alyssa, what is our first X factor?
Who do you want first? Does anyone?
Pick one. Okay. Jason Robertson for the Western X Factor for Dallas. You want to take it or you want me to go first?
I'll take it.
Okay.
I mean, you're talking about Jason Robertson's ascent into the elite status in the NHL. He has been their everything the last 2 seasons. As Jason Robertson goes, the Stars go. Now, this year, they got a little bit better depth with the addition of Wyatt Johnston. The random revival of Jamie Benn. And Tyler Seguin actually just kind of sucks now. So they really need Jason Robertson to be, oh my God. They really need Jason Robertson to be the guy. And this year he definitely stepped up to that. when you look at Dallas getting out to the division lead early in the year, it's on the back of Jason Robertson's excellence. Like, he is the biggest reason why they are looking at the possibility of still winning the division. As they've slipped in the second half a little bit, he has slipped a little bit. It's not to say that he hasn't still been excellent, but it's not the same level of dominance as it was the first half of the year. And I think that when they get out of 3v3, which they're clearly not good at this year, that when you get into Jason Robertson as he's the man for them, that's the biggest X factor there is. The guy that could, if he goes out and has a great series, Dallas wins round one. If he goes out and outplays Kirill Kaprizov, if they end up Dallas, Minnesota, Jason Robertson is the number one reason that they end up advancing into the second round. And then he has to try and outplay Nathan McKinnon and friends in a potential round 2 matchup. I mean, we're going to talk about some other guys as X factors here, but I think sometimes it's easy to get caught up being cute with X factors and forget that this is a league that is still determined by top talent. Your best players, if they are not your best players in a playoff series, you're probably not winning it.
So here's why I think he does qualify as an X factor a little bit. That guy has 7 NHL playoff games in his career. 7. The rest of that Dallas team is pretty darn experienced.
Yeah.
They went on that Stanley Cup run a couple of years ago. Joe Pavelski's been around the league forever. He's got 1 million playoff games. Mm-hmm. There are plenty of guys who have been there and done that for Dallas before, and Jason Robertson isn't one of them. He did fine. 4 points in 7 games last year in that series where Dallas got absolutely shelled night in and night out, and Jake Oettinger tried to drag them to relevancy and couldn't do it. But I do wonder a little bit about guys like that. Can they rise to the moment of the playoffs when they need to? And the answer is very likely, as you said. If he does, Dallas is going to look good. If he doesn't, they're really going to struggle in that first round.
Yeah, it's going to be really depending on their matchup that they end up with. You know, if it's Seattle or Minnesota or LA. Yeah. If it's LA, I think they're in trouble. I think they might be in real trouble. But it is interesting that Jason Robertson, because there's 7 games. It's the 7 games against Calgary last year where they had no business playing 7 games.
Yeah.
But when you were watching it, and you're like, oh, hey, Jason Robertson was really good last year too.
Was the one dude producing an odd chance
and
here and there.
It was like, where is it? You know, they had like 19 shots on goal. You know, you wanted to see it. That the Stars last year looked like they just ran out of gas at the end.
Yeah.
And you do wonder, is the fact that they've been trying to fend off Minnesota and Colorado for
the whole
3
year.
months, they've been like staring at the rear view mirror going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. The fact that they might have blown this to the point where they have to go and
have the second seed.
Yeah, and have the second seed all of a sudden. You get a really, really tough Minnesota team as your reward for second place. Jason Robertson, I think, is going to determine a lot in that series.
Megan, this was your pick. How'd we do?
You guys did wonderfully. I feel a lot better. And I wanted to, someone in the chat said, is that really an X factor? He's their best player. And I want to take ownership of that very valid point. And I want to build upon it too, because I appreciate the playoff experience you call out, Rudo, in a 23-year-old player being where there is some uncertainty and some unknown, and the ways in which it obviously for Dallas to succeed requires more than just one player playing well, because Jake Oettinger played out of his mind. And that's not going to be enough. And so what I think too is a quality or a fact surrounding Robertson that is going to benefit him and maybe lends itself to the X factor conversation is not wasting a historic season from Robertson. The ascension, like you mentioned, AJ, is breaking franchise records for Dallas and Mike Modano's points record. You have a 106-point player. You don't want to waste that. And I think individually, Jason Robertson's not going to want to waste that, but I also think that beyond the motivation of wanting to win the Stanley Cup, there is probably something personal among the team in wanting to, or even feeling the electricity around a player like that and wanting to play alongside a guy like that, because they probably don't want to waste that year of Jason Robertson's either, especially a player who took such a team-friendly contract.
No kidding.
This is the future. And in a similar sense to how this is the best like Toronto has looked in terms of getting out of the first round, for Dallas, because of the year that Jason Robertson's having and because Jake Ottinger is also continuing to be great in net, this is also one of the best looks Dallas has had. They've been building towards this, but they haven't quite put things together. And Jason Robertson is going to be a big piece in making or breaking that. And I think the team around him is going to come up big. And if they're playing for more than just Stanley Cup, but also this guy that I'm sure they've come to appreciate in a lot of ways, I think that's where the X factor might have some merit.
I do also think that, to build on that point, when one of your very best players is 38 years old, like, Joe Pavelski needs to make this happen.
Well, run out of gas.
Like,
yeah.
we're waiting any year. He's going to wake up and he's going to get into an NHL season and he's not going to have it anymore.
Yep.
We didn't know if that was going to be before he even got to Dallas, when he left San Jose. You know, it's gone very well for him there. It's been a great fit, especially next to Jason Robertson. They've really clicked and very much brought out the best in each other. But you're talking about, like, they kind of have a do it for Pavs kind of thing going on.
I love that, yeah.
And you're talking about not wasting an MVP caliber season out of Jason Robertson. Well, Joe Pavelski, like, needs this.
Yep.
Like, he needs to. This is one of the best chances he's going to have chasing the Stanley Cup, because they get 1 year older, their aging is going to affect them a lot more than it is
Most other teams.
Well,
yeah.
and you look at the teams around them.
Colorado.
Minnesota's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
They're only going to get more money in the future as they
get
their
through
cap
these
problems.
cap stuff.
Yeah. Colorado's going nowhere. Their core is locked up. The Avalanche are a problem who will be a problem.
Well, and you look around the rest of the West too, right? Even teams like Seattle that are on the come up. A team like Calgary, if they can figure it out, is not an old core.
There is a decent chance that Connor Bedard lands in the Central Division.
Yep.
And becomes a problem for the other 7 teams that don't get him. And it won't be Dallas.
Yep.
You know, if he lands in Arizona, you're looking at a Logan Cooley, Connor Bedard, with all the other guys that just had career years down there to screw up their draft lotto chances. If they get the draft lotto miracle, good Lord, like, they need to make this happen now
I
for
think
Dallas.
St. Louis is an example of what happens if you don't.
Yep.
If you
Yeah.
don't capitalize on the prime window of your core and they just grow older.
Yeah, and with St. Louis, like, they have the miracle run. They get their cup. They get to
they-
feel good about the
But
dismantling
they really
of it.
haven't been contenders outside of that 1 year.
Yeah, they feel like their best year was last year.
Yep.
And they were extremely fortunate to get a 6th game
Yep.
that they lost.
In regulation.
Suckers. Thanks for the arch.
This is a hypothetical. Don't take it too seriously. In a world where Avs and Dallas play in the second round, is that series as simple as stop Jason Robertson, win the series for Colorado?
I think it more realistically is beat Jake Ottinger.
Okay, fair enough.
But definitely they will be best on best matching up against with Jason Robertson in mind as one of the players to shut down, one of the top players too.
Beat Ottinger 1, stop Jason Robertson 2.
Exactly. Yes, yes,
Got
yes.
it. Makes sense to me.
Don't let
okay.
Jamie Benn get comfortable.
Yeah. Survive Joe Pavelski.
I don't want him to experience a day of comfort in his life.
I mean, he doesn't look like, he just looks
He
like
does look uncomfortable.
Yeah, he just kind of
Perpetually.
always looks like he has gas that he just can't get rid of,
Oh,
and he
all
just
right.
walks around with it.
Get us out of here. Bring up another X Factor. Who else we got? Okay, this one's mine, Matthias Ekholm, so I'll let you two.
It's interesting we had one of the same for the Avs.
Yeah. We'll get to those. We'll
move
get
on,
to
we'll
those.
Evan Rodrigues was one of my X Factors for the Avs until I deleted it and changed my mind. And then got cute with it.
Oh God, what have you done?
I figured AJ would be hyped about Matthias Ekholm. I'll put it that
Yeah,
way.
I mean, what can you say about Matthias Ekholm? I would just say I refer to last night.
Sure.
Look at the impact that he's had there. I believe they are 17-2-1 since acquiring Matthias Ekholm.
It's very good.
You talk about what they needed was a big physical defenseman to handle the own zone, to give Darnell Nurse a little bit of help, but also was a guy who was not uncomfortable with pucks. A guy who's not just a total black hole. A two-way guy that has a little bit of that ability. You know, and Matthias Ekholm's time did not end that great in Nashville. Obviously, last year he wasn't very good, and then in the postseason series, the Avs just ripped him limb to limb, and that's the worst I've ever seen Matthias Ekholm play. And so it felt like, oh, he's bad now. He was pretty good for the Preds this year. He's been fantastic for Edmonton. That has been the right move for them so far. And they didn't need more offense. They just needed defense that helped supplant the offense. And going from Tyson Barrie to Matthias Ekholm, like you go from a one-way offensive player to a two-way player who also checks so many defensive boxes. Matthias Ekholm felt like a great add to me at the time. I think 17-2-1 is not going to be how they really are. If I recall correctly, after hiring Jay Woodcroft
They had
last
a nice
year,
little run like
they
that
had a
too,
pretty
yeah.
solid little run as well. We'll see how it goes in the postseason, but for right now, you have to feel like Matthias Ekholm has had a transformational effect on them defensively.
And I'll admit, too, I was skeptical that it would have that kind of impact because of his year with Nashville last year and the concerns surrounding. We talked about in the series preview how there are some question marks. Actually, no, we didn't talk about it yet. But we've talked about it on other pods, how the defense in Edmonton has question marks surrounding it. And this felt like an obvious piece that should help, but whether or not that could be realized, because can a singular player have a transformational effect like that? I was skeptical, truthfully, especially just because he is an older player. I just didn't know how it was going to fit. They are willing to part with the offensive production of Tyson Barrie, but what they get in return is where they needed the most help. And I think it's made Edmonton a more well-rounded team. And this is a viewpoint that is shared, like in talking in the Avs room at Morning Skate before the Edmonton game. That was the consensus, that this is a more well-rounded team this year. And part of it is improving defensively, and that comes about through a player like Ekholm. When we get to the conversation about why Josh Manson is an X factor, I actually think they're very similar reasons. These are players that are difficult to play against, can stand up to the physicality that is required in a Stanley Cup playoff run, and will also be reliable defensively. And that is, I think, what Edmonton has missed and what has been a missing piece that he has helped to bring about.
Yeah, so for me,
Say he's your X factor, so
yeah,
you get the last word.
When I talk about X factors, to me, it's not even necessarily the key to them winning the series. It's just that the series is going to hinge significantly on this guy either way.
Yeah.
And you look at the way Edmonton is constructed. Both of you have already mentioned this, but yeah, on any given night, McDavid and Draisaitl can absolutely outscore all of their problems, and they just win hockey games. It doesn't matter. But this is not really a team that plays defense by committee. McDavid is fine defensively. He's not going to kill you, but he's not amazing. Draisaitl actively hurts you on the defensive side of the puck. You have some other forwards that are fine, but not a ton of great defensive forwards on this team. So you look at their defense, Darnell Nurse is solid. He's not worth what he's getting paid, but he can do that job for you. And then the rest,
like, regardless of his contract, he's a quality defenseman.
right? Exactly.
And Ekholm gives him a little bit of help.
Just some
Shouldering
breathing
that
room.
number
Exactly.
one. Yeah.
Exactly. He can take some of those shifts against the McKinnon in theory.
Like, the reality is that there are probably 10 to 12 true number one defensemen in the NHL, and there are 32 teams.
Yep. Math don't add up.
It's really, 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 really hard to get those guys. So you need to find solutions. If you have a solid two, like a Darnell Nurse, I think, if you have one of those types of guys, go out and get another one like Ekholm,
Yep.
and
And
you can kind
work
of
with
share
that.
that load a little bit, and that's the solution that you have to try and work through.
And then the problem is, if Matthias Ekholm gets to the playoffs and looks like he did last year against Colorado again, I have no faith that Stuart Skinner can bail that team out behind him.
Yeah.
They're just going to get run over. So his play is just so crucial to where Edmonton goes. Not quite the same as Jason Robertson in Dallas. Obviously, I think Robertson is significantly more important to them than Ekholm is to
Well,
Edmonton.
I cheated, so.
I don't think that's cheating. It's just Ekholm isn't going to have the offensive impact. Not that he's bad offensively, but it's just crucial that Ekholm does the one thing that very few other people on Edmonton does.
He needs to play the Ryan McDonough role that
Yep.
McDonough did in Tampa Bay
Yep.
during their cup runs. If he can't do that job, it won't matter.
Edmonton just has a hole in their lineup.
It just won't
Yeah.
matter. They won't win.
Facts. All right. We have one more. I don't know. I have no idea what
What have you
AJ's
done?
Western X Factor is. Logan Thompson.
Oh, I love this take.
You want to take it away first? Then?
I shouldn't have volunteered myself so quickly. Honestly, what immediately sprung to mind, and not so differently from the Jason Robertson conversation, because Logan Thompson is, when healthy, the intended Vegas starter. I get that part is obvious, but
Yeah.
because health has been a concern, I think that's a fair reason to have him as an X factor. But even just in evaluating his season, I think because he had to assume the responsibility as starter, and there were a lot of questions around whether he could even do that. And I think he did. I think there were points too that people were maybe more hard on him. But when I was looking at numbers the other day with Alexander Georgiev in mind, the high danger save percentage, he is among the top. He's above Alexander Georgiev in this category. And that could also be a reflection of what Vegas maybe hasn't been doing right defensively and allowing so many high danger chances. But Logan Thompson has been terrific in those high pressure moments that I do think his health and his ability to get in these games will absolutely influence whether or not Vegas can go the distance. I think it hinges on him a lot.
Well, and I think when you see how much they've struggled without him, you realize what a, when you lose two veteran goaltenders in Brossoit and Leonard before the season even starts, and you're like, well, we've got this guy that finished games for us and kept us competitive, and he's been very good in the AHL for a couple of years. And Thompson, and they gave him that promotion this year. They let him give it a whirl, and I think that he rewarded them with a really good season, but the inability to stay healthy. They made the John Quick move, and he looks completely washed.
Yep.
And that's where you're talking about. You're saying if Logan Thompson's not ready to go, is Laurent Brossoit or Aiden Hill or John Quick going to get you through a best of 7? Because I feel like that answer is no.
Yeah. I would not have any faith in any of those dudes.
And that's where if Logan Thompson is healthy and is in net, I think he, I guess we could have had the same conversation about Mark Stone. I just
I'll talk about
completely assumed that he was going to be healthy when they were like, oh, he'll be out indefinitely and he's having surgery. I always felt like they were winking at us when they were doing that. Like, we know what we're doing. He'll be back for the playoffs.
So there's two things here for me. One, exact same conversation as with Jason Robertson. Logan Thompson has a goose egg in playoff games played. For the goalie position, especially, you just don't know what you're going to get sometimes there. You could get the Logan Thompson we've seen. Very quality goaltender for Vegas this year. And if he does that, you feel pretty good about Vegas, certainly in the first round. You get beyond that, whatever happens, happens. But two, when you look at the rest of Vegas's lineup, they're not a team that pops off and scores a ton of goals and outscores a lot of their problems. Yes, they have Jack Eichel, who has produced very well. Not unbelievably, but very well. And the rest of their lineup, sure, Mark Stone, how ready to go is he going to be? How much production is he actually going to provide? And then the rest of their lineup there's solid production, but there's not unbelievably quality depth that you're looking at expecting to produce, especially you get down into their bottom 6, and there's just not a lot of production from that team. So you get into a playoffs as a team like that, and you're trying to win games 2-1, 3-2, things like that. Logan Thompson is going to have to come up with those big saves. He's going to have to maintain that high danger save percentage for them to win hockey games. Otherwise, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. So I'm always extremely skeptical of goalies just in general. He's going to have to prove it to me. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I just think with, you talk about Eichel and Stone and all the guys, Martinez and Pietrangelo, guys who have battled some injuries this year. And some lineup inconsistency. It just doesn't matter. If Jonathan Quick is in net and he plays the way he has this year, none of this matters. It all unravels.
I think the true testament of an X Factor too is the uncertainty, the parts that remain to be seen. And you mentioned it too in not having those playoff games, but we watched how hard he played in fighting for playoff games at the end of the regular season. And it's interesting to see that intensity in the lights out hockey that he is capable of playing. And then you're curious then what that looks like in the playoffs, because that could be a real problem if this playoff version of Logan Thompson is anything like what we saw in him at the end of the regular season last year in fighting.
Where his team will break his heart ultimately.
Right. That was
It
absolutely
felt
crushing. He
awful
did
for him.
everything he possibly could.
Yep.
Guy couldn't get any goal support in a shootout.
They went, 0 for 21
Yeah.
in like shootouts for
Yeah.
3 straight games? That was
Yep.
insane. Some of the craziest stuff I've seen. So,
And he gave him a fighting chance. And that's the thing that Thompson has consistently done in his Vegas career is he has given them a fighting chance. And I think it's so weird to think of like the West, the likely West like top seed this way, where it's just like they are so susceptible because if it's not going to be Logan Thompson, there's no faith anywhere else at that position that it gets done. Like the Avs won 6 playoff games last year with Pavel Francouz in net.
yep.
You know, there's a little bit of faith that if Frankie has to be called upon, he could do
the
it.
job, man.
But if it's not Logan Thompson in Vegas, that everything that they've built can be undone at that position, just like that.
All right. Well, on that note, we are brought to you by Volo Sports. You can go to volosports.com. Sign up today. Spring sporting events close tomorrow. So if you want to get into a league, you got to get on it right now with volosports.com. When you sign up with them, a bunch of awesome stuff happens. First of all, you can play like whatever sport you want under the sun. Basketball, volleyball, kickball, handball. There's a million other sports that I'm blanking on right now as well. Doesn't matter. Flag football's in there. Softball. Did I say that already? I don't know. There's like 30 sports. Just go to volosports.com and look at them. Use code DNVR10 when you sign up to get a discount. And the coolest part is the money you pay goes towards kids' sports here. So really, you get to play sports so kids can also play sports. It's good for everybody. It's good for you to exercise. It's good for the kids. Everybody wins with Volo Sports. Go check them out. Again, sign up today or else you're going to miss all of the spring leagues. Also brought to you by Illegal Pete's. You can go to one just a couple blocks down from the DNVR bar. Blaze did it at intermission the other night. Picked up a burrito and made us all super jealous.
He regularly does.
He does. So
After the second period, he's like, I'm going down.
gonna go grab some Pete's.
He already ate at the bar, and so he's hungry again because it's been 17 minutes. So he has to go down there and get dinner 3 on the night.
It's
Dinner
true.
3.
He goes through carbs quick. He does.
It's crazy, man. Just watching him put back food is so impressive.
You can get your Illegal Pete's at 10 different locations here in Colorado. They also have happy hour from 3 to 6 p.m. Verified best margaritas in town, I've been told. So go check them out. Get your fresh, delicious burritos. Okay, I don't even want to know.
just her reaction to best margaritas in town. She was like,
I taste tested several
Yeah.
of them.
There you go. From the source. All right, confirmed. Go check them out. Illegal Pete's, delicious food and happy hours. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche Podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. All right, should we get into some of the Avs X-Factors here?
Yeah, because I didn't even look at yours. I was so busy. I saw Logan Thompson. Brain shut off.
Blanked out everything else.
well, I'm not the only one to have Bo Byram.
I think we
Oh.
all have a little bit of
Of each?
crossover. Yeah.
Well, it'll just be open dialogue then.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, so pick one of ours. Let's see who. All right, we'll go with mine first. So I took Josh Manson and Evan Rodrigues. I'll start with Erod here. I think the potential impact of Erod is pretty clear. There's a pretty significant delineation between first half of the regular season and second half of the regular season Erod,
Now 10 points in 30 games.
which is just not good enough for a guy that, regardless of how healthy the Avs are, at minimum, this is a dude who's going to be moonlighting in your top 6.
Yep.
And the reality of the situation the Colorado Avalanche have put them in is there's going to be a little bit of doing the second line center job by committee.
Yeah. I mean, JT's your 2C.
Mechanically, sure. But I guarantee you will see Jared Bednar blend some of that lineup on any given night when someone's hot, when someone's not. And you're going to need that production. Yes, you need it from JTC as well. Definitely an argument that he's an X factor too. I'm sure we'll talk about it. But when you have guys like Erod in that third line, in that middle six of your lineup, I really think you could pick any one of those guys to be an X factor. But Erod is the one that you need some reliability out of. You need some consistency out of that.
If you add Arturi Lekkinen into the lineup, which they are doing, probably this
for
week,
Wednesday, like
it's a pretty good chance.
I guess it is for Thursday.
Yeah, that guy. There's a pretty good chance that guy plays in Nashville.
Yep.
But you add that guy, and he's still in your. Rodrigues is still in your top six, but he's no longer just your set and forget next to McKinnon,
right,
and Rantanen. And if he is the guy that is there, he's got to pick it up a lot because you don't go into a postseason series and let that guy just drown on your top line.
Yeah. I mean,
has he been out? I'd have to check, but has he outscored Dennis Malgin in the second half of the season?
Probably not, or it'd be close if he does. So, and it's not that Erod has played terribly, especially over the last 10, 15 games, I would say, but the reality of playing an increased role in Colorado is the Avs just need that production. Where do you see? Is he more important than a JT Compher? Is he more important than an Alex Newhook? Where does he fall on that list for you, Megan?
He's more important than an Alex Newhook as Alex Newhook is currently constructed.
Sure.
And I still think JT Compher holds a more important role on this team because he has become the 2C solution. Because my gears are turning, but if Arturi Lekkinen returns, and he's expected to this week, whether it could be as soon as Thursday, he looks great. Is Evan Rodrigues in the top six still?
So if anyone's curious, Dennis Malgin has outscored him.
There you go.
He has 14 points in the last 31 games, and Erod has 10 and 30.
Yeah. I think he would be, because I will continue to be on the train that come playoff time, I don't think Dennis Malgin's in the Avs top six.
No. So, because am I not including a player here properly? Landeskog, big question mark.
Yeah.
Not counting on that in my imaginary lineup that I'm thinking of in my head.
I think that you're not putting Helm up there.
Yeah,
so I think you've got
Lekkinen
it covered.
Would push him theoretically
To the
maybe
second
down
line,
the line.
sure.
But who do you take him? Because it becomes Malgin, right? Like if you take Evan Rodrigues out of your actual top
someone
six,
who's currently there stays there.
It's for Dennis Malgin
or Newhook,
correct?
right? Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
it's not going to be Newhook.
I hear you, but mechanically, those would be the only two that make sense replacing him.
Because my ideal role for Evan Rodrigues come playoff time would have him in a third line role. It's just not currently possible because this has been the concern with Rodrigues is consistency and having these points in a season where his play sort of becomes quiet and falls off. It's not like he is playing as a detriment to the team, but the lack of production, which is what he is here to do, is a fair concern, and why, in the spirit of what an X factor is, whether or not he shows up in the season form we saw like in December timeframe or not, will sway a little bit of what the Avs can expect in the playoffs. And so he's a great candidate for an X factor because he's shown that he's capable of this. I think right now he isn't playing to top six expectation, but I would be really pleased if he played a third line role. I'm just not sure if it's possible right now.
If you had a third line, if you roll out a third line, say Darren Helm comes back and you put together Cogliano, Helm, and O'Connor. Like we know that those three are three little
Just
balls of hate.
stick
that
them
just work
together, let
Yeah,
them go.
but that should be the fourth line.
Like that's your combination there. And right now, you would probably even put Ben Myers in between them if Darren Helm
Helm's
isn't
not
ready
there,
to go.
sure.
But
So you're left with Eller, Newhook, and Erod.
that's what I'm saying is if you opened up a series with that as your third line, Newhook, Erod, and Lars Eller. It's a little island of misfit toys.
I'd feel pretty good about it, man.
But it's speed, the experience of Eller, the defensive acumen of Eller, especially as like the defensive conscious of that line.
Yep.
Down the middle as the center. He's one of your better face-off guys. Like that could be a third line that just that group in general becomes your X factor as a trio.
I agree.
Well, and look, the reality of the conversation we're getting at here is you can bring up AJ's X-Factors. All X-Factors on the Avalanche are under the umbrella of Gabe Landeskog's health.
Yeah, because Gabe Landeskog he's a total lineup changing element if he is in your lineup. If he's healthy and he's in your lineup, it's completely different.
Yep.
Your top six is so good. All of a sudden, you're looking at JT Compher and you're like, he's easily your sixth best forward. The five guys surrounding him are all very, very good. And you do have the flexibility to put a third line together of Alex Newhook, Lars Eller, and Evan Rodrigues, which is going to be a handful. Don't know if it would necessarily work. Like, it would be interesting to see how it goes. But at least on paper, you'd have to feel like that's a really interesting chess piece to play, especially with the defensive ability of Eller, the skating ability of the two guys around him. You know, we saw with Newhook earlier in the year when he got put next to Cogliano and O'Connor, he kind of adopted that mentality. If Eller gets put in between two guys who skate the way that Newhook and Rodrigues do you think that he adopts some of that hustle, that go, and we see a more mobile Lars Eller than we ever really have because he's being pushed by the guys he's playing with? Is it one of those cases where they kind of elevate some weaknesses of each other, and it turns out to be like that line ends up being a massive factor in the Avs?
So I think we are already seeing a little bit of this with Eller and Newhook.
Yeah.
And in the moment,
it's
And Myers, the speed.
I wrote about it last night.
I got a locker room quote from
Yeah.
Bednar describing this very thing.
Yep, it really worked perfectly. You got the quote about it, and then I wrote about Eller, and it was just like the whole thing was just like you could see where this is headed.
Yep.
You could see where these pieces are starting to fit
in
together.
the kitchen, whatever Bednar's whipping up there, like we don't expect Ben Myers is the final solution there, but he's fine right now.
Yep.
It's just picturing him. The Bednar is like he's got like the chef hat on,
No, I do too.
and he's back there.
We'll
just,
add a sprinkle
Sugar,
of Newhook, we'll add a sprinkle
spice,
of Ben.
little Ben Myers.
Well, yeah, and like Ben Myers is like on the shelf behind him, where he's like, good old like if I need it, it's there.
Right next to the veteran sauce.
Because
Yeah, oh,
Eller
no.
is the basis of this third line. Like, I think that he's, what's happening is being built around him, but he could stand to absorb the qualities of his line mates, especially if it is speed.
For sure.
Yeah, because when you saw a more mobile Lars Eller last night, who's getting up and down the ice against the Oilers, and you're like, dude, if the Avs end up in a series against these guys, and this is what Lars Eller looks like against these dudes, Lars Eller is going to eat them up.
I do think it goes the other way too, though, and you've seen it as a bit of frustration from Lars Eller recently with Alex Newhook, but Newhook is learning on the fly how to be a better defender in zone from
'cause
Lars Eller.
Lars Eller is parenting him on the ice in a very loud manner.
Yeah.
And watching it happen in real time is like, I hope Newey's cool with this, but also, like, I've been waiting to get adopted by Lars Eller, but I think
Newey sniped you on that
Newhook
one.
might have jumped first in line.
They sit by each other in the room. I
There
bet
you go,
they
yeah.
are close.
Yeah, and I bet it's close. Like Eller is like
Father,
if you,
son,
If
yeah.
you disappoint me
You
today,
have to look me directly in the eye.
exactly. Tell me what happened here, Newey. What happened?
All right. Well, if you want to watch this blossoming relationship, you can do it on Fubo TV. Fubo TV has altitude, so of course you're watching your Avalanche, you're watching your Nuggets through there. They also have another 140 channels, so it's just like regular TV for you. Check them out at FuboTV.com/DNVR or use the QR code right there on screen to get it. When you use that link, you get 15% off your first month with Fubo Pro. So they got that for you. I've always said my favorite part is the DVR. You can watch stuff on delay. You can skip the commercials. You can do all that good stuff.
It's also nice that everybody has a smart TV now, and
Right.
it's just an app that you just.
It's no different than
install and
turning
log
on
in.
cable.
It's
Yeah.
it's the exact same thing as signing into YouTube.
Yep. You just turn it on and it's
You
good to go
install the
for
app,
you.
you log into it, and you're good. Except it's different from YouTube in that it is cable TV.
It's got the cable channels. So, Fubo, your best option to watch sports in Colorado right now. Again, go check them out at FuboTV.com/DNVR to get signed up today. And then when you're sitting back watching your cable, crack open a Breck Brew. Breckenridge Brewery is the official beer of DNVR. You can get it at your local liquor store anywhere in the United States with the Breck Beer Locator online at breckbrew.com. You can check out their merch there. You can check out all their other stuff. We love them over here. I know we're doing we got a little something planned with them for the playoffs. We don't have all the details, but we got cool stuff coming. Leave it at that. Go check them out. Breck Brew. They're pretty cool.
And we did a playoff shirt with them last year.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I love that shirt.
we definitely have a playoff shirt coming.
Like, I don't feel like it's any secret.
There's some other stuff in the works too, though.
But I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That's a thing that we should be comfortable being like, guys, you can expect this.
Not wrong. Not wrong. Go check them out. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche Podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Bring up Megan's X-Factors. Let's talk about some of the crossovers we've got going on here.
I actually thought you would have Lars Eller as an X Factor.
Didn't even think about it.
I was like, because I considered, I said, no, AJ's definitely going to include him in at least one.
Yeah, no, mine. My original ones were Rodrigues and Byram, and then I was like, look, we just have to have the Landy conversation.
Yep.
It's an interesting perspective in talking to media. We're going to have this video coming out later where we ask Avs media X Factor. A few people said the health of Gabriel Landeskog, and it was not a perspective I'd previously considered because it's not so tangible right now, but it's 100% true.
I am of the opinion, just as entirely just me speaking, but I'm of the opinion that if Gabe Landeskog gets healthy enough to play, not only do the Avs win the West, but I like their chances to repeat. If Gabe Landeskog does not get healthy, I am
all bets are off.
much murkier on them. I don't think they can repeat without Gabe Landeskog.
But win the West, maybe.
And I think that it will be very matchup dependent and Georgiev dependent on whether or not they can win the West. So I do think that's a pretty big X factor in terms of where I view the Avs with Gabe Landeskog and without. Because I think the floor and ceiling just go so much higher with him that if Landeskog returns and they don't win the West, I think it will be a disappointment. Yeah.
All right. Well, on the defensive side,
no pressure, Landy.
should we talk about the veteran or should we talk about the young gun, Megan? Manson or Byram? Which one is the bigger X factor?
You know, I almost even feel like it's cheating to have Byram there, but there is a lot to still prove. Like, he has playoff games though under his belt. So to be fair, and honestly, that's when we watched him play some of his best hockey. So
a fifth of his career games have taken place in the postseason.
On one hand, there is a little bit of that is more proven than some of these other players that we've talked about, but he is so young. He has missed parts of this season that there is still a little bit to be unveiled for this year's version of Byram, but I've liked this year's version of Byram, so it's interesting. Like, he almost feels like a little bit of a cheat for an X factor, but the reason it becomes important is without him, you severely miss what he brings to the table, especially because we've watched what this D-core has looked without key players when they have missed Makar, when they've missed Manson, and when they do get a Byram back in, the stabilizing quality that he brings, but also so much of what the Avs do offensively runs through their defense and their ability to get the puck up ice. And that is something that Byram and Makar both do really well, that they're going to rely upon deeper in their pairings. Wherever Byram shakes out to be in there, even if it's second pairing, that is going to pose such a threat for other teams to play against. If the top pairs are Taves, Makar, Byram, Gerard, question mark.
And that if your top pair is Taves, Makar, they're out there with McKinnon, Rantanen, and the big guns. When Byram is at his best on that second pair, there's a good chance that a lot of the time he's the best player on the ice at that given time. But that's only when he's at his best.
Yeah, and I would also just say that the flexibility that the Avs would have defensively, because one thing that we have seen, they're small samples, but Byram and Makar together have been very good.
Yep.
And Byram and Gerard, in a large sample, have had a lot more struggles. I could go into this whole on ice shooting percentage thing and how it's not sustainable, whatever. But right now, they're hemorrhaging goals together at a pretty alarming rate. They're not scoring enough on the other end. What they have seen and what we saw last night, playing as a top pairing, is that Taves Gerard has worked very well together.
Yep.
And Byram Makar, again, in a smaller sample, has worked very well together. And as tempting as it is to put Taves and Makar together and just say, this is one of the best pairings in hockey, you might break them up, go with those other pairings, and improve your defense as a whole. And this is where Byram's upside and his potential of
That's
at his
definitely
best. True. This is what makes him such an X factor, is that the variance of play from Byram, it's been so high at times. When we see him at his best, he's taking over games. And at his worst, you see moments like last night. You'll see a shift like last night, or it all just goes sideways.
And you remember he's a 21-year-old kid.
Yeah,
who's
exactly.
Barely got 100 NHL games
this
under
is the
his
thing.
belt.
I wrote about it last night, in that if you add up all of his games, he has 109 games played in his NHL career. He's been around for 3 years. So it's easy to forget that he is still very much in the gestation period of his career, where he's learning all the hard things that you have to learn and go through as a defenseman early on.
And I want to go back to the flexibility of your lineup, because this is where I love Meghan's both of your X Factor picks, because the Avs defense is kind of inexorable from each other, where you also put Josh Manson back into that thing. Now you can throw Manson and Byram together. You can throw Manson and Girard together, which we have seen in the past has worked quite well. And you all of a sudden have this very fluid defense where any given situation, there's something that the Avs can put out that they can feel good about. And Manson in particular, I think, is the one guy on this defense that brings that something that no one else really does.
Yeah, I mean, he's the eat your heart on the ice guy. He's the warrior on your defense. He's, where Cogliano kind of gives you that warrior spirit at forward. You don't really have the ultra physical, I'm going to battle you to the absolute death in front of the net on your defense, except Josh Manson. That was the huge element that he brought to the defense last year. You see, like, both Jack Johnson and Eric Johnson will battle. They're both big enough that they can engage physically, but Josh Manson will straight up kill you right there on the ice. Like, he's just, and that leads to a lot of mistakes, a lot of bad penalties that he will take that you live with, because he brings that element where he is not fun to play hockey against. He's miserable. You get anywhere near him, just watch him sometime. Just watch him. Hopefully, I would love for him to come back this week. I don't think he's going to, but
probably game one.
Yeah.
He looks really good. I think
watch
they're being
him.
extra cautious.
Sure.
If you just watch him sometime, go back and watch an old game that he plays in. As soon as an opposing player gets near the net,
he's
Josh Manson
eating them. Yeah.
Josh Manson is pushing that guy. He's putting arm. He's getting handsy with them. He's slashing them. He's just making life miserable. And then you're like, okay, great. This is my matchup in a best of 7. Like,
what do they say in boxing and MMA? Just keep touching them.
okay.
That's the playoff slogan for the year. Just keep touching them.
For Josh Manson, definitely.
I'm not making that shirt.
I do think the Manson conversation, though, everything that you're saying is why I agree. Honestly, in a smaller scale, his return in the Minnesota game earlier this year, the impact he has on this team is immediately felt. It's observable. Mm-hmm. And playoff failures of years past has been a lack of physicality. And going back to the Ekholm conversation, wonder if Edmonton derives inspiration from Colorado's acquisition of a player like Manson, and then the way he fits almost immediately. Then there were some struggles just acclimating after that. But then in the playoffs, he becomes a pivotal player because he is punishing. You are going to have to pay the price when you play against Josh Manson. And I think that this is a quality that the Avs are missing. He brings to the table. It's really important. And it helps him to withstand the physical demands that come with the playoffs. And it's why I think he's truly important too, because like you both have mentioned, this is a quality that not many are bringing to the Avs decor well. Like, I think too, there's more chance of offense than an Eric Johnson or a Jack Johnson type, because they build similarly in this way, but he's just like a step above.
Yep.
And I think he's more trusted there and a much better partner than for whether that be a Byram or a Girard, a much better complementary partner.
Well, and this is where the parallel to Ekholm is great, because part of the appeal of Ekholm, it's not just that he was a really good defender. He brings a physical presence and he can do all these things that Edmonton needed, but he's not a misfit in the up-tempo style. And what we saw with Josh Manson that we didn't expect to see from Josh Manson last year was a more willing offensive creator and playmaker, and a guy that was maybe at times too eager to jump into play, but was very willing to do it. And you see, since he got to Colorado, he's more or less been a 40-ish point defenseman.
If on pace, yeah.
Yeah, obviously on pace and rates and stuff, but it's really like, and most of his career, he's like 18 points.
You're right. Not even in
so
the
it's
ballpark.
a significant leap in terms of production from him, but that he brings the element that they so desperately need, and that stuff is contagious. And it's where not having Arturi Lehkonen and Gabe Landeskog in their lineup in the last, Landeskog obviously all year, but having those kinds of physical guys around, when you see a teammate go out and rock a dude, you get hyped up. The adrenaline flows, and then you're going to go out there and you're going to see an opportunity. You're going to put that guy into the wall, and then you're going to do it, and then it just becomes your identity.
And
next thing you know, Darren Helm is averaging 10 hits per game.
Yep.
And you're like, what is going on here? It just becomes this infectious thing, and it's an attitude that Josh Manson absolutely brings, but it's also what he does on the offensive side of the puck, where he's not just, hey, I'll just rim this puck around. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Weirdly enough, it's where we've seen Jack Johnson separate from Eric Johnson in the last couple weeks. He has been a more willing offensive player. We've seen Jack Johnson driving the corner, trying to take guys wide, doing all kinds of stuff that you don't associate with Jack Johnson, and it's been successful. And when you have Josh Manson, who does all those things that the Johnsons can do, but at a higher level, he does it. He's a better offensive player at this point. He's a better defensive player. And he's a more physical player. He's a hugely important part of what they want to do, of making this defense at its best.
So we do have to move on and wrap up pretty quickly here, but I do want to mention, it feels like almost all of the Avs lineup could be an X factor. Not McKinnon, not Rantanen. You know what those guys are. You know what you need out of them. But Arturi Lehkonen returning to the lineup. Cale Makar returning to the lineup.
Yeah.
We briefly mentioned JT Compher and Alex Newhook are going to be huge X factors on what their production looks like for these playoffs for Colorado.
JT Compher consistently has been a point per game or a half point per game player in the postseason in his career.
Yep.
For the 5 playoff years that he has been in, he has produced at right around a half point per game. He now needs to do that as a 2C.
Yep.
And if he does it as a 2C, the Avs will be successful. And if he does not, they will not be.
Sometimes it's that straightforward. We do have a couple super chats to hit here. 27 Swede bucks from Flats, who says, do you think EK65 deserves the Norris? Much love. Yep. I don't even think it's that close.
Yeah, you've had so many flawed cases happen behind him that there isn't a contender for second.
Yep.
He separated the 100 points. I think this is an interesting conversation for another day. But
Definitely
a
a different off-day pod, yeah.
The easy answer would be yeah.
Yep. I think it's a yes. And then $5 from Zach, who says, hippo character with stars glowing in his eyes, pumping his arms in the air with the word hype pulsating above him. Thank you, Zach. All right.
Not a good enough reason to use the word pulsating.
Yeah, that was tough. Pulsating was, I don't know about that. Anyway, any final thoughts on Avs X-Factors before we get out of here for the day?
No, I'm good.
Good. All right. On that note, we're going to wrap this one up. Of course, we got games tomorrow and Friday. We'll be fully covering them for you. We got pregame, watch along, postgame, and then the season will be over, and we get to talk all playoffs all the time.
God.
Almost there, fam. Almost there. So be sure to tune in, like, subscribe here on YouTube for us. If you didn't catch it, you can always catch us as a podcast on whatever podcast platform you prefer. Leave us a review there, 5 stars if you really like us. We appreciate you, and we will talk to you tomorrow.